What?
Good evening, Ireland. It's 1 o'clock, Wednesday, the 2nd of December. I'm Kevo Donnelly, and here for your Nocht. Here for your Nocht, we pride ourselves on being within the eye of the younger generation, from the 17-year-olds right up to the 29-year-olds. Today's topic is a main concern in a global debate. Here we'll be discussing many interesting elements surrounding social media addiction. First, we will look at the highlights from the sensational social media addiction debate, which took place yesterday between Mark Zuckerberg and Greta Thunberg. This will then be followed by the corresponding TikToks and tweets that have went viral surrounding the debate. Later, we will have a panel of guests to further dissect social media. Is it addictive, and what we can do as an individual if we feel that we are misusing social media. The guest included is renowned Dr. Kieran McMahon, who has written a book on the psychology of social media alongside Blind Girl and a worried father, Sean. This panel, including myself, will be giving some advice to the public on digital wellness. Here's a clip from the debate.
So, Mr. Zuckerberg, are you saying social media is an addiction?
Well, yes. Well, no. Social media is not an addiction. It's a way for people to connect and interact with each other. The aim is for people to stay in contact, especially now with quarantine.
I have to disagree. A moderate amount of time spent online or on social media might be unlikely to cause harm, but it should not be used as a replacement for communication. The number of detrimental effects associated with social media when heavily used cannot be ignored. It's just...
But that does not make it an addiction.
It doesn't. The characteristics of social media addiction align with the diagnosis for substances like alcohol and drugs. People experience withdrawal, tolerance, and cravings for social media. People are using social media even though it is having harmful consequences on their everyday lives.
I don't see what harm social media is causing. It's used for entertainment and social interaction. How can somebody be harmed by messaging a friend online?
It's much more than that, though. It's been noted that the reason why people engage with social media can outline those who are more at risk for addictive use tendencies. If someone feels their social life is dependent on social media, they are going to become more at risk of social media addiction. Especially now too, quarantine and isolation. Social media is becoming almost like a lifeline for these connections with others. It can be so difficult to break away from social media when it can sometimes feel like our only mode for communication. And on top of this, people experience anxiety, sleep problems, developmental issues, and it can cause negative impacts for the family.
So what are you suggesting? That people just stop using social media because of these effects? Everything has harmful effects. Just because people get into an accident doesn't mean we should all stop driving, or people shouldn't stop drinking because they might get a hangover.
Okay, Greta. What do you recommend people do who have difficulty with social media usage?
Well, to answer yours and Zuckerberg's question, we recommend harm reduction. A person does not have to stop using social media completely. I understand that may be difficult in this technological age. We think that it's important to raise awareness that social media can be harmful and it can be an addiction. Social media is constantly there, and since it's available all the time, people can check their pages anytime, anywhere, and how many times they want. If you keep getting notifications popping up throughout the day, there's that constant reminder to look. It makes it nearly impossible for many people to stay away from social media for more than a few hours at a time. However, most phones have a wind down option these days, or an option to limit the time you spend on certain apps. This is a simple and effective way for people to have more awareness around their usage online. We feel that people need to stop and look at the effects social media might be having on their lives. We all know that social media can be used to connect with people, but it's important to remember you can easily get attached. Social media should not become a replacement for communication, but rather as an add-on.
This debate has been trending on Twitter for over 24 hours with the hashtag #ConnectButDon'tAttach. Kim Kardashian and Katie Hopkins have both spoke against social media as an addiction. Katie said, "You young people are all stuck in your phones now, and you're complaining about it." This was followed by Kim saying, "This is ludicrous. If I didn't have my social media, I wouldn't be able to speak to all of you." Russell Brand, however, argued for the awareness of social media addiction. He wrote, "Users go online to seek validation through networks such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, but rather impulses should be fulfilled through human relationships." Very insightful. Here are some TikToks that have went viral that illuminates the effect of using social media for an extensive amount of time. Thank you.
Let's go in the garden. You'll find something waiting right there where you left it, lying upside down. When you finally find it, you'll see how it's faded. The underside is lighter. Alabama, Arkansas, I do love my mom and pop, not the way that I do love you.
Well, holy moly, real life, you're the apple of my eye. Girl, I never loved one like you.
Merrily we fall out of line, out of line. I'd fall anywhere with you, I'm by your side. Swinging in the rain, humming melodies. We're not going anywhere until we freeze. I'm not afraid anymore, I'm not afraid.
People we decide to talk to today come from a wide range of backgrounds, and we've the extensive knowledge, of Kieran McMahon, who's dedicated his studies to psychology of social media. This is followed by Blind Girl, who's a social commentator with a huge online following in the social media world, especially with the younger generation. Then Sean here, he's a parent of 2 teenage boys who I hope you don't mind me saying this, feels that he's out of his depth with social media, especially in relation to his children, and he wants to give his personal accounts of such. This will all be informed by the various research that the team here have undertaken. I want to thank each and every one of you first and foremost for coming online today to give your accounts, professional knowledge and opinions on social media and whether it's addictive and what we can do. So I'll just begin by asking Kieran, could you begin by giving us kind of a general overview of what social media is and why it's become quite addictive?
Yeah, so thank you for having me. So within my book, actually, social media was very hard to define. You know, from Facebook to Snapchat, we know what it is when we see it, but where does social media end? And are Wikipedia and YouTube social media as well? In the psychological sense, social media is an online service that encourages users to publicly share their information, some of which feels quite private, such as photos and your opinions, your age, and so forth. Social media gives us connectivity with friends and family, where you can see updates on them, where they are, what they're doing, and who they're with. And it can be more personal too, where you can watch live streams and private message and video call. And lastly, there are values. Values are numbers which have meaning, such as your followers, your likes, your shares, and so forth. These values aren't the singular cause for social media addiction, but they do act as a motivator that reinforces the behavior of staying online. To go back to my question, it can be said that Wikipedia isn't social media, whereas YouTube is. With YouTube, you see that private information of people's lives and those values. There's the comments and the likes and the subscribers. And it has the same qualities as social media as Facebook and Twitter do.
So what are the social or the psychosocial reasons that people use social media?
Well, socially, it comes down to a network effect. Simply put, it's because you're friends with you using it. The more people you know that use social media, the more likely you are to use it. And if somebody feels that their friendship is dependent on social media, then they're going to use it more and they're going to become more reliant on it. And this is where the normative aspect of it comes in. This social capital of sorts that's attached to it, you know? And there's this social hierarchy involved. Through those values we see in likes and such, you can see who's making the most popular content, and it becomes a reinforcement when your engagement has a social payoff.
Thank you. That's a really good overview of what social media is, especially the distinctions, because I would never have thought of YouTube or social media. I also liked how you use these intrinsic values that actually explain like the kind of pull factors of social media, such as, you know, the reward you feel from the amount of likes you receive, or just the overall interaction from others. But could you just clarify how these values become so important to us? Like, how did social media usage become addictive?
Yeah, well, the dependency on social media can develop very rapidly. You're being shown new, fresh information every time you refresh your feed, and it keeps you drawn in. You get this through connection. For example, when we add somebody, they either have to like or follow us back, and here we get the reinforcement of that friend notification. And when we get that reinforcement to access to private information, the same with the likes and the posts and the comments, we enter a paradigm where sometimes we're rewarded and sometimes we're not. It's like Skinner's rats. And these are the values that I'm speaking of.
So are you saying there is peer influence, where seeing your friends using it can impact your own usage?
So social media only shows the good, which can lead to idolizing people's lives and comparing your life to others. And this can be quite negative. People using social media can then try to portray their social identities in this perfect light, showing that they're out and they're having lots of fun with their friends and they're having the best time, even if it's not necessarily true. And this gives the illusion of perfection that many strive for, even if it's unattainable.
Oh yeah, wow. So it's like a combination of the network effect on wanting that social payoff or even recognition amongst your peers, which seems to be having a negative effect on people. So I'm going to turn this next question to Blind Girl. I just want to ask you, what do you think the connection between social media and self-esteem is?
Well, it's been researched and found that social media does play a role. It has been shown that people with low self-esteem tend to use more social media to enhance their self-image and self-confidence. Being on social media does this brilliant thing of punishment by invisibility. Social media makes you want your post to be liked and to be seen. You're then emotionally attached to this. You want to know what is out there to connect to others. Studies then show that people experience a fear of missing out, or what you might also know as FOMO. This leads to people wanting to constantly check their phones and to stay informed. If they cannot access their phones for fear of missing out, they can experience anxiety. FOMO is also found to be a correlation to excessive virtual interactions and depression. Then, when we don't have access to the phone or social media, we can experience nomophobia, as it is a transitional object. This is an external object that is seen as part of the individual by the individual. So a person who cannot bear to be without their phone experiences anxiety when they're without it.
Yeah, the existential fear of missing out. Now I have to say that's a very good metaphor or comparison as to what the phone actually means to us. Sean, would you have experienced this nomophobia with your own social media, or at least with your children?
Oh yes, 100%. Like I have to say, especially now with lockdown, my kids are in secondary school and college, all working at the dinner table now. And when I say working, they're looking at least two screens, their phone and their laptop. If I threatened the younger one of taking it away so that he would do work, you would think I was threatening to shoot him or something. And then I would ask him to do something, and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, Dad, no problem." And he has forgotten 2 minutes later. I tell him he has the attention span of a fish.
That's to do with the way in which we use apps. Social media is used to connect. We're not just on Facebook chatting and looking at everyone's feed. Once we get bored of that, it's off to TikTok, or bored again, back to Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube, and everything else. We are statistically jumping, looking for this reinforcement or the dopamine hit by jumping from one app to the other. And the next thing you know, 3 hours have passed and you've forgotten to feed the dog and yourself.
Haha, yes. I've seen that with my own boys, you know. You ask them to take the chicken out to defrost when you're out to visit the grandparents. Next thing you're pulling it into the driveway and they're standing in the kitchen caught red-handed literally, the chicken in one hand and the phone in the other. And I know for a fact it is the phone. I'm ready to kill them. Once again, threatening to take the phone off them, but there is a fear in their eyes from being disconnected from social media. What I want to know is how this addiction to social media is affecting the family.
If it's okay, I'll put that one to you, Kieran.
Well, the effect social media is having on the family is as we're all experiencing, such as phones at the dinner table. My own daughter sends me memes and so on as a means of communication and a primary means for some people. Anyway, I think it's important to mention that not only is social media affecting the family, but the family is also having an influence on people's social media addiction. Those who have insecure attachment or avoidant attachment to their parents are more likely to become addicted to social media. It is being used to find reassurance and gain feedback, and even used as a means of escape. And it helps people to form relationships that they may not get from the outside world. For example, think of the LGBTQ movement or the Black Lives Matter movement. I'd be quite reluctant to tell any parent to ban their child from social media because if they can talk to you, you're essentially isolating them, and that's not good for anyone.
Yeah, you're right. I feel it would be a good idea for me to have that conversation surrounding social media with my kids. How would I know if their time on social media becomes a problem?
So the best way to know if it's a problem is to be informed of the social media characteristics. There's apps for this, but to check knowing how long you're spending on them. Addiction to social media is not all that common, however, misuse is. So inform yourself as to where you stand on social media. If you're not sure that it's questionable, then challenge yourself. Challenge yourself for going off social media for a day, 2 days, even a week, and see how you do. And further research has shown that people who try to abstain from social media usually go back or relapse.
This as well. Think of the ABC model or the behavior analysis. The antecedent, behavior, and consequence of what's happening before, during, and after your social media usage. What are the feelings you're having before going on your phone? Are you anxious? Are you bored? And then be aware of your behavior on it during social media, such as how long are you on it? What are you actually doing? Who are you looking at? And in psychological terms, what exactly is the stimulus behavior? And think, is this beneficial to me? And with regards to afterwards, what did you gain? Did you have any nice conversations that you feel more secure or better from? Or do you feel worse, possibly comparing yourself to others or staying up way past midnight staring at the screen? What we suggest is to be aware of this and have this knowledge about yourself and your social media habits and realize, yeah, maybe it's best I just stay off Facebook and talk to my mates over WhatsApp instead.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of it comes back to people's self-esteem. And so if you've been affected by any of these issues raised tonight, although there's no direct helplines to social media addiction in and of itself, there's plenty of resources in place. So I'd like to pass along these numbers to helplines, and I'll be sharing them on the screen here. So Teenline helps with people who have low self-esteem. Aware helps with dealing with anxiety, and Jigsaw are also a great resource for young people to use for their mental health and well-being. On top of this, you can also contact your GP if you have any concerns with social media addiction or the effects that come with it.
Look up from your phone, shut down the display, stop watching this video, and live life the real way.
Oh, stranger. Still don't know my name. You still don't know my name. And I would die a slave. I wanna be the one you're guiding, 'cause I believe that you can lead the way. ain't nobody and no road home. I wanna be somebody to someone. And if the sun starts setting, the sky goes cold, and in the